Welcome to the SPEAKPact podcast, where high-performing speakers and the producers who hire them merge to give you the insider secrets to the lucrative speaking industry. Antoniette Rose, your podcast host and celebrated speaker agent, unveils insider success strategies. Discover a nexus of thought leaders and bookers, maximizing your potential in each and every episode. Your ticket to ultimate speaking success begins right here. Catch the transformative insights waiting for you on the SPEAKPact podcast, hosted by the industry powerhouse herself, Antoniette Rose.
Welcome back to SPEAKPact. Today I am bringing you a guest who has proven the process. She's taken her expertise, her passions, and her lifestyle basically to the stages, and she's going to share that journey with you. Welcome to the stage, Joyce Martyr.
Thank you so much, Antoniette. I'm very excited and honored to be with you today.
Well, we met back, I think, in September, and I was just so impressed by your journey that I wanted to bring you to the SPEAKPact audience. How did you become known as America's workplace therapist?
Well, I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor, so I've been a licensed psychotherapist for over 25 years. And earlier on in my career, I worked for an employee assistance program. And this is where I began my public speaking career. And I would go to client companies and give presentations about mental health awareness in the workplace, mindfulness, communication, and conflict resolution, and worked with companies across industry. And after I grew and built and sold a national outpatient mental health company, I realized I love speaking, and so came back to that and work with organizations across industry. I speak for national and global companies, federal agencies, unions, universities, you name it.
Well, now that you're successful, it all sounds like what a nice flow. But when you went from working in corporate and then owning your own company, selling it, and you're contemplating, well, maybe I'll do the speaking thing full time. Like, how did you know the math was going to math, right? And that you were really going to be able to attain that speaker life? You had some traction, but now it was a whole new ball game. So tell me a little bit about what was going through your head and your planning scribbles right around that time.
Absolutely. I was just speaking with a friend who's in that similar transition right now. And I know many people who are interested in professional speaking or are professional speakers have had an established career because they have an area of expertise that they want to share with others. And so I knew when I was running my company that I fell in love with speaking. I enjoyed giving continuing education trainings and the occasional keynote. And so while I was working to exit my company, I was building up my speaking business. So putting together my one sheet, my demo reel, making networking connections, joining the National Speakers Association, etc. And when I sold my company, I continued to maintain a small handful of therapy clients that I saw. And I also taught adjunct for Northwestern University. And as my speaking business grew, I was able to then retire from therapy clients and take on some coaching clients instead and leave Northwestern after 15 years. And now I am full-time public speaking.
What's speaker life like versus corporate life versus entrepreneur life? Like, tell me the kind of the perks of why it was all worth the risk and the struggle in the beginning. It doesn't happen overnight.
Thank you for recognizing it. It really doesn't. It takes a lot of work and time. And I think of it in terms of layers. I think of the first part of my career like plowing. I was a workhorse working in corporate America, working tremendous hours, working very hard. And the second phase of my career, I think of it as planting seeds, making relationships and networking. And now I'm in sort of the watering stage of really rooting and growing my business. And so, I loved gaining the experience that I did in corporate America and working for other practices. And then as an entrepreneur, once I started that, I knew I could never have a boss again, right? I loved the flexibility. I'm a mompreneur. Work-life balance is really important to me. And so I can take off the time that I need to maintain my own mental wellness and be the kind of mother and partner that I want to be, friend that I want to be. And so when I sold that business, I knew I'm a serial entrepreneur. And the speaking business is amazing. I have fallen in love with it. My favorite part is meeting people from all over the world who work in different industries, who live and think so differently, and to be able to share my messages of hope and healing. And my husband and I work together. He's
Oh,
also a professional counselor and speaker. So we often travel together, which helps because I know some speakers, struggle in their relationships because they're on the road and separated from their partners or families. And now that I'm an empty nester, it suits my lifestyle now.
family affair. I love that. And even your grown, like your older children can go on certain trips with you, those kinds of things. Yeah, the opportunities are incredible. I love the way that you likened it to a garden because it really is like that, right? We plant a seed. If we just stand there and stare at it, it's going to feel like it never happens. And we're just going to walk away and think, I planted the seed and it didn't grow. And so I must not be a very good gardener. So many speakers do that. They throw out some feelers, they throw out some calls. Maybe they put a pretty decent effort into it. That plowing and planting is not easy. It's some real work, but it's really in the nurture and the patience when you really get to bear the fruit. We have this whole theme going. Of it
Yes.
of it working. So in those early days, I would assume earlier on it was your corporation or your companies that were paying for you to go and speak or negotiating you. However, how did you even know? I know you were part of the NSA, fabulous organization. If you're a serious speaker, which most of the people who listen to SpeakPact are, hopefully they're in either NSA or one of the ones that are like it. But how did you get the courage, number one, and get the know-how on how to present yourself and price yourself as a speaker, corporate trainer, keynoter?
That's a great question. And early on, I sought mentors. So I reached out to other counselors and authors like myself who I knew keynote spoke and also did corporate training. And I asked them what their rates were and if they wouldn't mind sharing with me their proposals or how they structure a deal. And so that's how I started out. And then I started attending NSA Illinois when I was living in Chicago as a non member. And then I joined that chapter, and the local chapters offer a boot camp or academy, as does the national organization, to help speakers learn the business of speaking. And so once I started attending the national conferences, you're given a digital vault and access to so many materials that will teach you everything from marketing and branding to negotiating to pricing. And of course, I've made 1,000 mistakes and learned in the process. And with the marketing, we all throw darts everywhere until something sticks. And I had a couple great things happen. I had the American Counseling Association, for example, invited me to keynote. Was it pro bono? Yes. Was I in front of presidents of state branches who also had their own conferences? Yes. And I
Yes.
was hired by 6 of them
Woo!
for their state conferences. And a similar thing happened with the American Bankers Association and their state branches. So, you know, you can hit the jackpot sometimes, and you've just got to remain hopeful. And I think having a circle of speaker friends who understand the industry and that it is hard and it is a bit smoke and mirrors where it looks really sexy on the outside, but we're all sweating and working hard on the inside at home to make it all come together.
Let's talk a little bit deeper on that. You brought up a really great point. Two. actually. Number one, no talk is free. Every talk has payment, right, of some kind if you're doing it right. Pardon me. There are ways to go and just kind of give away your voice. But if you've really identified who your target market is, what your voice is, what your value proposition is, and who the right fit faces are for you to get in front of, you made some pivotal, key, wise choices that sadly many speakers will turn away. Many of my own speakers, as a speaker agent, will sometimes turn away. I'm just like, oh, that guts me because I know it was the right audience for them, but because they might have to pay for travel for that particular organization, you've really got to look at the opportunity cost if you don't take that opportunity. And this is the other point, it only takes 1 to 3 staple organizations that really latch onto you as you're in those early days when you're building out your career, where from there you can grow and build and get introduced and get recognized, but they pay the bills in the
Correct.
meanwhile. So had you not, I'm sure, gone to your own expense, given up your own time to give away your hard-earned IP for no kind of host check, you were wise enough to see that there were a lot of other checks involved done right. So thank you for bringing that up because it's really key. If you're starting out as a speaker, some organizations and even some mentors that you sign up with is, they'll push the narrative that's a correct narrative, but used in the wrong context, that people value what they pay for. Yes, they do value what they pay for, but don't you test drive first usually? Like if you're going to go buy an expensive car, most of the time you're going to test drive it. You're going to do your research on what other cars are out there. Well, organizers are no different. They want to know you're a sure bet. And they also want to know what your value proposition is, right? There might be many others who speak on mindset and the kinds of things that you speak on. What makes Joyce Martyr stand apart? What is she going to bring to our organization? Sometimes that's giving them a little sneak peek, and there's nothing wrong with that if you go in knowing that that's the right audience for you to get in front of.
Absolutely. You better believe I had my one sheets in my hand and coffees and lunches set up with, the attendees. And I really used that as a networking opportunity. So I learned in those early stages that a polite way, if somebody approached me for a pro bono opportunity, once I was looking for more paid opportunities, I started asking, is there an honorarium available? Or negotiating simple things. Might you give me a video testimonial or a written testimonial that I can use in my marketing materials? Or perhaps there's an opportunity to have the presentation videoed, and then that can be part of my demo reel that I send to prospective clients. So it's all about building. And as my business has grown, I have, thankfully been able to move away from so many pro bono or low paid gigs, and am working more toward my fee integrity in terms of having consistency in my pricing. And one of the ways that I've grown my business is by inviting my partner, Jason, my husband, to work with me. And now for the gigs that I'm unable to take or are a little below my usual and customary rate, I promote Jason, and he's been hired most of the time and has done a wonderful job. So we're able to service most clients at 2 different price points, and that served the business well.
Oh, I love that. And you know what? Being part of organizations like NSA and some of the other local organizations, even if you don't have a partner who happens, you guys have a beautiful setup. I just love it. But let's say you don't have a partner, business partner or life partner who is a speaker who you can do that with. You could certainly do that with some of the other speakers that you network with and talk about law of reciprocity. Number one, you have served the organizer. You've solved a problem for them. They need a vetted speaker for their budget amount, right? You have risen above that budget amount. So income integrity is important. You earned it. You proved your process. And obviously that speaker is going to not forget that you gave them that opportunity, and something will come along down the pike and they'll remember you and do the same. It's just a beautiful symphony. I always say, there are no competitors. There are only comrades. It's just all about the mindset and the attitude.
I completely agree. It's an abundant mindset that we're all helpers and there's more than enough work for all of us. And when we're generous and we share referrals and resources and connections, that comes back to us. Maybe not directly from that same person always, but I do believe the universe balances it out. And it feels good to help other people as well. I had a call yesterday with a new client, and they were hiring me for the opening keynote. And I noticed they're in Wisconsin, and I asked them if they had booked their closing keynote, and they hadn't. So I was able to recommend a friend that's in my speaker mastermind that lives in that location. And so that made me happy. It made her happy. And that's how we can grow and support each other together.
So good. Okay, shifting gears just a little bit. When did Financial Mindset Fix come into the picture, your book? And how has that, what kind of difference has that made to your speaking career?
It's made a big difference. And it was a long process, if I'm very honest with you, very humbling process. I was quoted in the Wall Street Journal in a cover article, and a publisher reached out to me expressing interest in me writing a book. And because of that, I was able to land a great agent in New York City. And subsequently, we put together a book proposal, and it was rejected by that publisher and many others. And so my dream of writing a book, I kind of lost the wind in my sails. And after I sold my business, I came back to that and came back to my agent and said, this is something I really want to do. And I had been giving a talk called The Psychology of Success that had become very, very popular. And in that talk, I talk about abundance mindset and the psychology of money. And so my agent loved that as a book concept. So we put together a new proposal. Again, a lot of rejection. And I started practicing what I preach in my clinical training. I used a technique called acting as if. And I started walking around my house and acting as if was already the internationally published author and speaker I wanted to be. So I said, I am like my friend Brene Brown, and I'm an international author and speaker. And I did this till I really embodied it. And I called my agent and I said, listen, if I don't get a book deal in the next 2 months, I'm going to self-publish. And within a month, I had 2 book deals, and one of them was from the publisher of Brene Brown.
Oh my goodness. Woo! Oh my goodness, this is so good. Act as if. Love it.
And I always say we therapists, we specialize in our own issues. And so I've had a lot of financial anxiety. When I started my company, I started it with $500, $50,000 of student loans, made a ton of mistakes, ended up in cash flow hell, was facing bankruptcy. And it was then that I learned the importance of humility and asking for help and support and being transparent, and also working on my own self-worth and changing my own financial mindset, shifting from scarcity to abundance, changing my thinking and emotions around money. And after a lot of work and a lot of help from many others, I was able to successfully sell my business 7 years later after facing bankruptcy for an 8-figure exit.
Wow.
I would have never thought that was possible. And I share that only because if I can do it, anyone can do it. It's really about changing your mindset.
Let's dive a little bit deeper into that, because this is your area of expertise as a psychologist and all of the track record, right, that you have. What is the connection between self-worth and net worth? And why would that be important to a speaker? Because we're a speaker, we have confidence, right? We're going to get up there. But there's a difference between confidence and self-worth that's directly related to net worth. And I'd love to hear your deeper thoughts on that.
Absolutely. So, as a psychotherapist early on in my practice, I noticed a fascinating trend. I noticed that as my clients made progress in therapy, they were starting to earn more money. And I was really confused by it, but client after client was coming in reporting raises, promotions, starting their own businesses and side hustles. And at this point, I was broke and I was like, how are my clients doing this? I want to do this myself. Why is this happening? And I realized it's because in therapy, we're always working on our true, authentic self worth. And I'm not talking about our ego. You know, we all, in speakers, we can have big egos, but we're talking about our essence, our soul, our authentic self. And once we get aligned and we get really connected with who we are, what our purpose is, what our passion is, and we align that with a need in the world, we are in the flow of abundance. And so, what I teach is for people to value themselves. And when we value ourselves, we communicate with assertiveness, confidence, we're willing to negotiate and advocate for ourselves and set healthy financial boundaries. So, instead of being a financial doormat, we're going to be successful. And there's balance in that. We also don't want to be a diva, which is on the other side of doormat, and dudes can be divas too. And that's when maybe we're grandiose and entitled and not respectful of other people's boundaries.
Oh gosh. Okay. I just have to interject a really funny story really quick. So I think you know, Joyce, that before I was a speaker agent, I was a producer of very large scale events. And one of my speakers that I hired to come up on my stage, was a male diva to the T. Like, it was hard to even get him there and all the things and all the special things we had to do for him. But once he got there, his little assistant, this was just heartbreaking. She was a little ball of nerves, this tiny blonde gal. And we always had a refreshment room, obviously, for the speakers. She was like in a full scale panic because we didn't have the specific French vanilla creamer that he likes. Like, first of all, if you would let me know, we would have had it there, right? But nobody mentioned the French vanilla, and I don't know, it was like Irish cream, whatever, creamer that he wanted. And she was literally like running around panicking. So I said, just, it's okay. Well, we're going to get you some of that creamer. And I sent somebody to go get the creamer and brought it back. But I actually had a talk with him afterwards. And I honestly, I never brought him back because she did not need to have that level of stress over a
Poor thing,
flippin'
yeah.
creamer. And if he was that way with the creamer, like, what's he going to be about with everything else? Like, what sets a human apart where they feel like they've arrived to the place where they could do that? It's just never going to be something, there's never be somebody I'll work with.
No, and that's a more narcissistic profile of, you know, having grandiosity and not having compassion and empathy and self-awareness and humility. And so we're all works in progress. And so we have to manage those aspects of ego. I love the work of Eckhart Tolle, and he says whenever we feel either superior or inferior to others, that's the ego in us.
Mm.
So it's really about finding that balance where we have healthy confidence. We know we're not perfect. We have our own growth edges, as we all do. We're all works in progress. And we continue to access support and evolve. And with regard to the speaker pricing, you had asked about that. And I'd love to share a story with you.
Yes, please.
The first time I was hired for an out-of-state keynote, I called my buddy Ross, who was someone I admire and author and speaker. And I asked him what his fee was. And he told me, and it was much higher than I would have ever been comfortable saying, but I borrowed Ross's self-esteem and I told that fee to the client company. And they said, no problem. Where should we send your check? And so I called Ross back and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm getting that amount for a 45-minute keynote. And he said, 45-minute keynote? I gave you my full day
Oh
rate.
no. Oh my goodness, that's great. I love
Well,
that.
but sometimes the most we get is what we ask for. And so we have to feel confident enough. That's where the self-worth comes in, to know that we're bringing value. And we need to be able to voice that and finesse it and deliver that performance or those deliverables to the audiences so that people want us back.
Well, exactly. The higher you charge, the higher you better deliver. Because everybody wants to feel like they got more than what they paid for. And that's what you do. Be kind, make yourself easy to the organizer. Don't be a pain in the bottom, right? Help them stack the chairs. If they need to help, whatever you need to do to make their life easier, they will remember that and you will be referred, and they'll happily pay you that and even more as time goes on. Let's dive a little bit further because I think this is so important. And this is where speakers really cut their careers short, I think, or never really attain those levels that they can. It's not about charging your most. It's really about the whole psychology of money. How can speakers leverage healthy ego? I don't know if you even call it healthy ego. I think so. I mean, ego is
Yes.
ego. If you're self-deprecating all the time, that's a not healthy ego, but it is an ego. If you're grandiose, but there is a healthy level. How can
Yes.
you utilize that kind of psychology of money um, in your negotiations in a way that's balanced and healthy?
Well, I think the importance of receiving feedback from others. So, as I've had coaches and mentors or colleagues who are professional speakers, they've shared with me what they think my price range should be. And usually it's higher than what I've been charging. And so I know I have those doormat tendencies. And so that's been a growth edge for me. Sometimes then I overcorrect and overcorrect into diva. And, then sometimes don't get a deal because I overbid myself. So it's definitely a process of learning that. But I think identifying different income streams is really important. So with the pandemic, I was able to pivot and provide virtual trainings. And now virtual corporate trainings are probably 2/3 of my
Oh,
business.
wow.
Also, offering coaching is another income stream. I've digitized some of my presentations into online courses, so I have passive income for that, as well as book sales, etc. So the more income streams we have, the better. And when you understand the industry standards and kind of where you should be according to your education and experience and skill level, that in your pricing yourself appropriately, you're going to succeed. And if I were free on a day and I could have a balanced life and accommodate the work, I would take a lower fee just to be working and have that income and to make those relationships and have potential spin-off business. And it wasn't until much, much later that now I can be more selective about the work that I do and when I'm going to leave the house. What is it going to take for that?
Okay, so many incredible insights there. Diversify. Like, there is nothing wrong with that. It actually gives you some breathing room to be a little bit more choosy. So I absolutely love that. But also be workable, be negotiable. So let's say there was an organization, Joyce, that you really did want to break into, even at this stage of your success. And let's just say, I don't know what your rate is, so I'm just going to throw some numbers out there. Let's say you tell them you're $25,000 for a 45-minute talk, and they're like, "Oh golly, we really do want to have you come speak. Our budget ends at 15,000." Let's say you want it enough where you don't really want to refer that particular engagement out. How do you make them pay for that other $10,000 gap in there? Are there ways that you negotiate so that you're still feeling made whole and they're really feeling like they've gotten it exactly what they needed as well?
I had this exact scenario yesterday with an organization that does tremendous good in the world. And so in my heart, I feel so aligned with them and I wanted to speak for them. And their budget was below my usual and customary. And they understood that. And so we were brainstorming and I said, might you be able to find a sponsor to do a book buy for attendees? And so they said, absolutely. We have a different line item in our event budget for books and for giveaways, for the attendees. And so we can purchase 150 copies of your book, which makes my publisher happy. It makes my potential for having a second book deal higher. And I also talk to people right away about the fact that I like having long lasting relationships with my client companies. So if they bring me in on the stage for an annual event, I'd love to be hired for follow up webinars. And so I plant that seed that, if things go great and they find value in my presentation, that maybe we could look at a package of webinars throughout the year. And that might be for all staff or for leadership. And I do provide price breaks when there are multiple engagements that are booked at the same time or there's a book deal. And I also, for example, with that event, have other client companies in that area. So I'll be reaching out to them and letting them know that I'll be in that state and available if they'd like me to come in and give a different presentation.
Okay. I love the get a sponsor one. And even if you don't happen to have a book, there's a lot of power behind getting sponsors. Another quick story. One of the MC that I loved, he has a big podcast and I always wanted him to come, but we didn't pay our MCs. It was exposure. We gave them a ton of exposure, but to pay his way there, he found himself a sponsor. And you can do that as a speaker as well. It happened to be Sovereign Silver, this health product. And I agreed as the organizer to give a good amount of exposure to that sponsor. We also gave them a booth and recognition from the stage. And as the MC spoke, every now and then he got to have a little bottle of Sovereign Silver right there, right there on the podium with him. But that's a overlooked tool in a speaker's toolkit where, okay, there's this organization that you want to go speak to. Maybe it's out of country, speak at, and maybe they have no budget or it's just a privilege to get on their stage, whatever it might be. Find yourself a sponsor. They're out there. There are organizations looking for people who will, in a warm way, promote their product. And there was no overt promotion, definitely not from the stage, of this particular product. It was just the fact that now this known and loved MC was kind of backing it. And then of course he would go to the vendor booth and meet and greet people. So there's a lot of power in that. Whatever your subject matter expertise is, there's probably a complementary product or service out there that isn't competing with you in any way. It's not going to be competing with your organization in any way. That sponsorship tip is huge. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited that has been successful recently. That's a new tool in my toolkit. And I think also asking for referrals to and recommendations to other event planners or meeting organizers, human resources individuals who might be looking for speakers. That's another way to add value to a booking that might not be able to pay your full fee.
That's a gold mine right there. That's one that Tony Robbins utilized for years and years. Probably doesn't need to utilize it anymore. But one good referral can be worth way more than that other $5,000 or $10,000 that you could have gotten. Write it right into your contract. If I blow your socks off, like I know I will, you agree to personally introduce me to 3 colleagues, vendors, associates who could possibly also benefit from my presentation. they're generally very happy to do that, especially if they're saving $5,000 or $10,000. And that's worth way more to you than that other money. And then even if you don't have to negotiate that in, just ask. A lot of times people are very happy to do that for you. So much goodness. I know about this stage of the show. People are wondering, okay, where do I find Joyce Martyr? How do I connect with her? So can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. My website is joycemartyr.com. It's JoyceMartyr.com. And I'm on all the social medias, but I would love to connect on LinkedIn specifically.
I love LinkedIn. That's my playground.
Yes.
It's a newfound love since the pandemic. I always had a profile there forever, but I never really hung out there. And then, when your way to connect professionally kind of dwindled down, I took a second look at LinkedIn. I'm kind of like, where have you been? This is just amazing. Yeah,
It's a
really.
great platform for speakers.
Have you ever received an engagement just direct from somebody finding you on LinkedIn?
Yes, absolutely. I share articles that I've written for Psychology Today and Money Geek, and a lot of times I'll receive messages, can you give this as a presentation? That whatever the article was, like I've written about workplace bullying, for example. And then an individual would see that and say, can you come in and give a presentation on this for our organization? So definitely through LinkedIn, it's really important to have a presence there. And I derive most of my referrals through LinkedIn and my website. So I have a strong SEO for my website. And so if people are Googling a mental health speaker or a speaker in my area, a global financial wellness speaker, all come up.
Yes. Okay. So between referrals, strong SEO, and being pretty smart about utilizing your own voice and showcasing it. So let's talk about that for a moment. So you're on my podcast, Smart, right? You know the power of podcasts and getting your voice out there and really tapping into other people's audiences. So powerful. Also, you mentioned briefly about these different publications that you write for. How did you step into that? How did you get them to take a second look at you and maybe make you, are you a regular or do you just do features every now and then?
A little of both. So I've been a regular contributor for the Huffington Post, Psych Central, Psychology Today, Money Geek, and I'm currently put in a pitch to Forbes. So cross your fingers for me, please. So it started out with simple blogging on my own website. So I would write short articles, 400 to 1,000 words, to create searchable content on my website for SEO purposes. And that's how the Wall Street Journal found me for
Oh
that
my
interview
goodness.
that I mentioned,
Wow.
was through a blog that I wrote for my website. And so these writings led to media interviews, TV, radio, podcasts, uh, articles in print and on the web. And once I started blogging more, I had a friend who was writing for Psychology Today, and I said, I'd like to do that. Could you make an introduction? And he said, no problem. And I met with the editor, and they said, here, sure, here's your login and go for it. And so you kind of have to get to the point where you have enough content that you can demonstrate that you are a good writer, that you have good ideas, that people like and resonate, with your content. And then there's sort of a science to developing an audience by contributing regularly. And so I do a tremendous amount of media, and I have a membership with Critical Mention, which is a media monitoring service. And it lets me know whenever I'm quoted in the media internationally. And over the past 5 years, I've reached an audience of almost 2 billion people per year
Wow.
through articles and blogs and podcasts. And this gives me credibility and authority for people to bring me on the stage. And that I'm worth the price point that I'm charging.
Okay, another set of brilliance you just shared. So often someone will write an article or show up on a blog or show up on a podcast. Nothing came of it, nothing really happened. But you hit the nail on the head when you said contributing regularly is what builds your authority and your audience. And it doesn't happen next month. Sometimes it doesn't happen for a year. You just trust the process and keep doing it. And the right person will be in the right place. They'll discover your approach to your expertise, and it'll strike a chord and it'll open up this whole other floodgate of opportunity for you. But it wouldn't have happened if you're like, that's not worth my time. I'm not going to sit and write an article nobody's going to read, or be on a blog nobody's going to watch. Number one, there's ways to know how podcasts rank. Reach out to some of those ones that already have established audiences. For a host to put you in front of their hard earned, highly treasured audience is saying a lot about you, right? I'm not going to share my audience with you if I have any feeling that you're going to lead them astray, give them bad information, be a dud. It means I'm saying to the people who follow me, Joyce Martyr is fabulous. You need to hear what she has to say. And they're already here because they want to hear, right? And so where else can you get that? There's no ad you can run. I'm not saying don't run ads, but there's really no other way that you can hit the hearts of the right people unless you do give your voice away to a certain extent. It's all part of the whole ecosystem.
Very well said. It's free branding and PR, or marketing and PR, to get in front of audiences on podcasts or in the media. And so I know that that's a few hours a week that I'm dedicating to that type of work, but it's a marketing effort that's going to lead to paid speaking engagements. And I liked your point about how sometimes people say, no, I'm not going to do that. I've seen that as well. And sometimes I do think that's a confidence thing. And I experienced that myself. One of the first times that I was reached out to by a TV anchor to do a televised segment, I was very, very nervous about that. Lots of social anxiety. And they wanted me to talk about hobbies and the importance of hobbies. Not necessarily my clinical area of specialty, but is it something that I could talk about? Absolutely. So I put together some bullet points for the segment, some talking points, and we did it. And that led to MTV inviting me to be the therapist on The Real World
Oh my
when
goodness.
they were in Chicago.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, you just have to say yes and step up and expand your comfort zone.
And it's all about the audience. If you know there's going to be bodies or ears, right? Eyes or ears in that audience, that could potentially lead to something else. It's worth it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so before we go to the signature question, one last question. So you are a prolific speaker. This is your full time now, and you've given us some real clues on how you keep those engagements rolling in, referrals, SEO, you getting your voice out there in all different kinds of ways. Do you also do your own outreach, or do you rely on just luck? Like, do you have a methodical thing that you do?
I had somebody give me feedback that I was not being proactive like that. And so I have worked with some organizations that do some pitching for me, and I haven't had the best return on investment in that. And I think it's really important to choose somebody who has a lot of experience and really good connections. But I do know other speakers who've had great success with that. I have not done a lot of pitching myself. I've more landed gigs from prior speaking engagements and networking, but I know many of my colleagues do. They fill out proposals and send, pitch submissions and that type of thing. And I know that that's an important part of the process as well.
I completely agree with you. When you're hiring, and I'm an agent, so I'm kind of talking against myself right now. But when you hire somebody else to pitch on your behalf, it's never going to be as solid as if you're the one, right? That they either come to or you reach out to them. I am proud to say that we have shifted our model to make sure that you're the face and you're the relationship that's being built versus the agent and agency. It's a nuance, but it makes a big difference in the number of engagements and the value of the engagements that you get, the monetary value of engagements that you get. I think that if anything can be said, whichever of these roads that you take, consistency is king. If you would have just thrown out a few articles out there, maybe did SEO right when you built your website years ago, it's really the power is in the consistency, whether you do have a pitching process or hire a company to help you with that pitching process, or if you decide you're going to write 3 hours a day to get your voice out there in different ways. As long as you believe in your own process and you're consistent at it, it is going to pay high dividends.
That's very wise, Antonia. And I love your business model because you offer your industry knowledge and expertise and all the supports and framework, but allow for that authentic connection between the speaker and the client. And I think that's a wonderful model. I'm glad that that's been so successful for you and your clients.
Thank you. Key. You always kind of circle them out and trying to figure out that perfect formula. But we have found that is really the key. The relationship should be yours as the speaker. You're the one that's coming with the IP. You're the one that's going to be influencing the audience, or just needs not to be a veil between you and that relationship. Okay. Joyce, our signature question as we're closing. You've given us so much to work with here, but if there was only one thing that an emerging speaker who really wants to take their career to the next level, if there is this thing that they could do every single day to move the dial, to move them past maybe a plateau that they're on, what as the mindset brilliant woman that you are, what is that thing that you would encourage everybody to do?
So it's a few-step process. Number 1, embrace your worth. Number 2, this is the miracle question, which is a therapeutic technique. Imagine you have a magic wand and imagine what you want your life to be like and aim high. Make it the biggest, most beautiful, magnificent, prosperous, lovely, supported life that you can imagine personally and professionally. And then number 3, act as if you've already achieved it. Like I did with the book. Walk around your house, say, I am a global speaker. I am a thought leader. I am an influencer. And change the way that you relate to others to reflect that. And people will pick up on that vibration and they will start treating you that way. So I've loved that I've had so many people come back to me years later and say, that business I was going to build, well, here's the website. I'm 3 years in.
Brilliant. And not out of reach for anyone. Any one of us can do this to meet our next level, right? To reach. And right now, as you and I are speaking, it is the beginning of a whole new year. And that's the time for renewal, right? To make some differences in your path. I love your act as if. I'm actually going to try that. And I have heard, this is probably, I'm assuming because you were in the field, you probably did this without even realizing, but what does that smell like? What does it feel like? Mm-hmm. What does it sound like? What does it taste like to achieve that next level of life?
I love that because then you're embodying it. How does it feel in your body?
Yeah.
I love that, Antonia. Brilliant.
Well, this has been jam-packed with golden nuggets. Thank you so much for sharing your one unrenewable resource. And your most precious resource, right? Your time with us today. I so appreciate everything that you poured in to the SpeakPact audience today.
Thank you so much, Antoniette. I admire you and respect you tremendously. I'm honored to be with you. So thank you for your support.
You are my pleasure. Joyce Martyr, look her up, connect on LinkedIn, get her books, go see her speak. Your life will be transformed. Mwah. Ciao, ciao for now.
Thank you for listening to the SpeakPact podcast. To become a recommended speaker of Antoniette's WPC speaker agency, or you are a host or planner looking for a dynamic expert in optimized performance, Antoniette would like to personally meet with you. Secure a time with her at speakerbooker.com. Again, that is speakerbooker.com. It all begins with a vision, a voice, and a pact to impact. Join the SpeakPact movement by joining our new private Facebook group at the link in our show notes. Find us on nearly every social media platform at One Antoniette. That's number 1, ANTONIETTE, or simply hashtag SpeakPact.